University of Maine system welcomes you to participate in an interactive college success series hosted by Chancellor Daniel Malloy and each of our presidents from Maine's public universities. In each episode, we will discuss a range of topics from paying for college, student expectations, successful transition, and much more. We'll even answer questions live from our Maine community audience. The presidential tour is streamed live every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Please visit values.maine.edu to view the schedule of upcoming episodes or watch past episodes.
I'm Joan Farini-Mundy, the president of the University of Maine and our regional campus, University of Maine at Machias. Welcome to this special edition of the Maine Public University's Presidential Tour. We're pleased tonight to have presidents from all of our campuses, as well as our chancellor. And we're here to talk with you about two topics that we know are of great interest right now. One is the planning that we are doing currently for a safe return to campus in the fall of 2020. And closely related to that are the admissions and academic supports and ways of doing business today that we'd like to share with you as we look for the best ways to support our students going forward. Everyone is here, as I've mentioned, and I'll just quickly go around the screen and introduce everyone. President Rebecca Weick from the University of Maine at Augusta is there. University of Southern Maine President Glenn Cummings. University of Maine at Farmington President Edward Cerna. University of Maine at Presque Isle President Ray Rice. University of Maine at Fort Kent, President Tex Boggs. Newest member of our team, the Dean of the University of Maine Law School, Lee Softly. And then our Chancellor, Daniel Malloy. And I'd like to turn to Chancellor Malloy to ask him to begin with some comments about how our system is preparing to be ready for a new fall class of 2020 and for opening.
I think this is my opportunity. Let me also begin by saying that I think Maine is doing an outstanding job in handling the epidemic that we are facing. And I want to say that I very much appreciate the leadership of our governor and the quick decision making that she and her administration have brought about and quite frankly allowed for our planning and execution of our conversion from a primarily in-classroom model to a exclusive distance learning modality, and very proud of how we were able to affect that. But I also wanted to talk to the people of Maine, parents and students who want to come and join us this year, and that is that we are absolutely planning on being in a position to be open late summer to traditional in-classroom learning. It is our primary plan, and there's reason to believe that we can and will do that. Now, the thing that would prevent us from doing that would be if there was a direction from a state or federal government that was not advisable. But we are going straight down the road on a primary design for in-classroom learning, which I think the majority of our students, certainly freshmen, are looking for. We can't change the dynamic if we're not allowed to do that. And quite frankly, we're spending the time since going exclusively online across the state to make sure that if that's the eventuality for some or all of next year, that we're in a position to have the best delivery system of those different modalities, to make sure that we're available to all of the people of Maine with respect to reaching students. It's one of the reasons, for instance, that we were a major part in standing up 200 hotspots throughout the state of Maine, so that students who would otherwise have difficulty accessing Wi-Fi had the ability to tie in. So I guess what I'm saying is we're going to plan for all occasions. Our earnest hope and expectation is that we will be able to reintroduce in-classroom learning. But if not, you can be assured that we will do a great job and will apply lessons that we're learning on a daily basis to meet Maine students where they are.
Thanks, Chancellor. I want to remind everybody that we are here to answer your questions. And so if you have questions, please submit them on the UMS Facebook page. And later in this segment, we will get back to them and try to have some answers for you. To pick up on what the Chancellor has said, as we try to look at what will constitute a safe return to classes, one thing that we're doing here at the University of Maine is engaging some of our scientists, particularly those in the biomedical fields, to be watching the literature, to be engaging with their colleagues around the country, to be helping us to understand as much as we possibly can, of course, working as well with Maine CDC and the governor's offices, to help us understand what it will take to have a safe reopening. So we have virologists, biomedical scientists, an immunologist team, and biomedical engineers starting this work of pulling together information and helping us to make really good decisions about what the fall might look like. With that, and speaking of the kinds of flexibilities that we need to have in place, I'd turn to President Cummings and ask if you can tell us, Glenn, a bit about how USM is thinking about flexibility with scheduling as we move into the fall.
Well, thank you very much, President Farini-Mundy. We appreciate your co-hosting us or hosting us here today. I want to say flexibility is the question. We're hearing from parents and students all over the place. My world is changing rapidly. I need flexibility. Please help us, help us make determinations with a little bit more consideration and discretion than we normally would. And that's been a big help for us for guiding our decision making. For example, we normally get the bulk of our enrollment in applications before May 1st. But we're also making sure that we have the rolling admissions where we sometimes get up to 600 or 700 students even past May 1st. That flexibility is really appreciated this time. And in addition, people have asked, what about our financial aid packages? We've made a commitment that we will get back within one business week on both admissions and financial aid up until until June 30th. That gives 2 more months for people to make those decisions because I know their financial situation is changing rapidly. I also want to say that we're looking at what we call a welcome home scholarship for people who really want a high quality education closer to home. So these might be students that are going to school out of state. The new conditions make that not the most attractive option, either financially or safety wise, and they want to be here in the UMaine system. They want to be here at USM. And so with that kind of flexibility is huge. And that fits well with our work that we've done over the last few years and being more flexible about reducing that debt load. We're down to $23,000 for 4 years complete. And that's something that's very, very attractive to a lot of Maine families. So I think your question about flexibility is something that's much on our minds, much on the minds of parents and students. And we're very happy to provide that flexibility.
As President Cummings is speaking, I'm reminded what a strong commitment we have system-wide to meeting students where they are and to realizing that we have a wide diversity of students and circumstances and situations. So I'd like to turn to President White from the University of Maine at Augusta, which serves such an adult and non-traditional learner audience, to tell us a bit about how we're making sure that that audience is well served as we do the planning going forward.
Certainly. Thank you, President Farini-Mundy. UMA has 2 campuses, one in Bangor, Augusta, and 8 centers located around the state. And we also specialize in distance education. So many of our students are already online or taking distance technology in order to continue their instruction. So the transition for us was relatively smooth. And we are doing planning as we speak for all the different scenarios that might play out this fall. Our fondest hope is that we will be able to welcome students to our campuses and centers, but in the event we are not, UMA students are already able to flex their schedules by taking some classes online and through distance modalities like interactive television and also video conferencing.
This notion of being transparent and helping everyone know what we're doing and recognizing that our planning shifts as we get new news and have to think about new issues really by the day. I'd like to turn now to President Cerna from the University of Maine at Farmington to talk about how your campus is working to keep students informed, both current students and your prospective students.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joan. Yeah, it's a moving target right now. The situation is evolving rapidly. One of the things that I'm really impressed with at the University of Maine system is just how transparent we are and what a great job our communication team has done in pushing information out to families. And one of the great resources that we have at the University of Maine system is our website. And I would highly encourage students and families and prospective students to continue to leverage that resource because it is so good. There are monthly updates on that site that are posted. And also we have a University of Maine system public health advisory page, another fantastic resource to keep up to date on everything that's happening within the University of Maine system. At the campus level at the University of Maine at Farmington, we leverage social media quite a bit. We know that our students like to track our social media pages, so we try to keep that information pushed out through that media channel. And also email. Even though we know students don't like their email quite as much, we still use it, and we push out a lot of information on that channel as well.
We've had a question come in about something that President Cummings said, so I thought I would at least take it up from the UMaine perspective, which asks if the extended financial aid timeline that President Cummings mentioned is applicable in all campuses. I can say that for UMaine and UMaine Machias, we have extended our deadline for a month, which is out to June 1. But again, watch our websites, watch our communications, because we are trying to be as flexible as we can be and trying to communicate as we make changes to accommodate our students, both our current students and our incoming students. I'd like to turn next to President Rice from the University of Maine, Presque Isle. There is a lot of public guidance in place right now about social distancing, and we expect that that will continue to evolve, of course. But how do you think, President Rice, how do you think about that as you prepare to bring students back and make that kind of planning prepared as you go into the fall? How do you think about what it would look like to implement these kinds of social distancing expectations on a campus?
Thank you, President Farini-Mundy. And as the Chancellor mentioned earlier and others have mentioned, we have begun the transition into the Safe Returning Planning Committee from the Emergency Planning Committee at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. And so that committee has representatives from all of the campuses on it. And there are individuals on a campus planning out the stages that would happen with the reopening of our campuses as we get guidance from the governor's office, from the Maine CDC, as to what are the next steps to move forward in. Obviously, as people have mentioned, this is a volatile situation and it's an unfolding situation. So we're anxious to see when those first steps occur as we start moving out of this pandemic crisis, and what that means for our campuses and when our campuses will be able to move away from social distancing and from the strictures on the number of people, for instance, that can meet in certain public locations. Obviously, universities, colleges are highly dependent, whether it's a classroom, whether it's cafeterias, whether it's other venue points, athletic programs, for instance. That sort of social distancing makes those events particularly challenging. So we'll be watching this very closely over the course of the summer as to what we may need to be putting in place as we get closer to the magic date of August 30th, when we all start our classes. Should we still have some of those strictures in place from the Maine CDC? As others have mentioned, we have flexible alternatives at each of our institutions. For instance, at the University of Maine at Presque Isle, although the majority of our students take live courses here and enjoy everything from the in-classroom experience to the athletic experience, which obviously is so important to so many of our students. We also have online coursework, and we have the competency-based education program, which some of our students in this environment have actually availed themselves of from working from home, so to speak. So we'll be prepared for whatever that eventuality is that comes on August 30th, by the time we all hope to open. And as the Chancellor said, we are preparing for university as normal on that date, but we'll be working hand in glove with the governor's office and the Maine CDC to just see what kind of strictures might be in store for us on that date.
You know, as you listen to everyone, I'm hoping it's coming through that we want to be very student-centered and student-focused and to try to accommodate all of the kinds of situations that may occur. We are seeing some questions about testing and SAT testing. I know that at the University of Maine, and I think this is true across the system, but my colleagues can jump in, we have transitioned to a test optional admission status, except this year for a couple of programs, and then even next year, those programs will move to this additional flexibility, because we know that we can look at students' records and learn a lot about them through a variety of parts of their experience. And one of those parts of the experience, of course, that the University of Maine system has been central in is early college, where we have worked with high schools around the state and worked with students in those high schools to give them the experience of college before they really start and get them to think about the possibility of joining us in the system. So I'd like to turn to President Boggs from the University of Maine at Fort Kent. Fort Kent has been a leader in early college, and let's hear a bit about how you all are thinking about that going forward, Tex.
Fortunately, most of our early college programs are already online, so that's something that we'll continue to deliver in that method. And we have learned from this experience that our high school students are adapting to learning from home, and this will help us as we prepare for next fall. So we anticipate, in fact, we have more applications at this point in time this year than we've had in any previous year. So we're anticipating that we'll have a significant number of early college students and that we'll be able to serve them well.
Thank you, Tex. I'm very privileged to be able to welcome Maine's former Chief Justice to Maine Law and to the UMaine System Presidents Group. Lee, would you like to talk to us a bit about your perspective as a former leader of a branch of state government about how collaborating with Governor Mills and our public health officials is shaping our planning, and your thoughts about the law school in all of this?
Thank you so much, President Farini-Mundy. I have to say that moving from one branch of government into the university system, I have been just incredibly impressed by both the planning functions, the transparency, and the coordination with the executive branch. The great news is, and the Chancellor has already mentioned this, Governor Mills has done a remarkable job. She's been clear, concise, thoughtful. Dr. Shah has given all of us a whole lot of information on a regular basis. I think the whole state has come to trust that the information that is available is trustworthy and reliable, and we can plan using that information. That has meant that the university system, working very closely with the governor's office, has been able to be involved with MEMA throughout all of this. The Maine CDC has also been involved with the system. I've been very impressed that the system offered up some of its facilities for some of the really difficult situations in the healthcare community. All of those things have gone really very smoothly because there's a lot of communication and there's a lot of planning going on. I've also been delighted to find that the law school itself has been included in all of the planning process, and that allows us to work both with undergraduates and even with high school students who may be thinking eventually that law school would be a great place for them. So it's been a very impressive time for me to watch how the system is working with the governor's office. And I think this is another example. I'm getting used to the technology, but having YouTube presentations where people can see what's happening is helpful to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for your perspectives. In this portion, we've been very focused on what we're planning and how we're preparing to bring our students back, by all of our hopes, of course, face-to-face in the fall, and certainly with safety and with all of the precautions that we need to address. There are a number of questions coming in on this. One is about first-year students and what we can anticipate for them as they make their way into a new setting. Certainly what we've been able to do across the system relative to helping to bring in our next class of students, where we've pivoted to virtual tours and to all kinds of personal contacts directly from our enrollment management offices out to prospective students who are interested, work with faculty who are calling students and talking with them. As we prepare for a bit of an uncertain schedule with all of this, we know we will have ways to help welcome and orient our new students, and all of the campuses are working on how to do that well, virtually for as long as we need to, and then face-to-face in the traditional ways that we always have done so successfully. With that, at this stage, we will take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the academic actions and admissions accommodations that we're making in support of Maine high school seniors and our own existing students. So we'll be back soon.
Our world, our lives have changed. Though separated by great distance, the UMaine and UMaine Machias communities are stronger than ever, staying connected, continuing to learn and grow online. Our people's expertise and facilities are lending a hand wherever we can best serve our state and our neighbors. Looking out for one another, even when times are tough, is everything it means to be a member of the UMaine family. Tomorrow's future starts today, and we'll get there, together.
Excel here, University of Southern Maine.
Again, everybody, thank you for participating with us. I'd like to remind you that we're looking for your questions and comments, and we're watching the UMS Facebook page. We'll address the comments and questions in our third and final segment. But for this segment, where we want to focus is on the academic actions and admissions accommodations that we've been making on our campuses to support our current and incoming students. And I want to share some really interesting information about the adjustments that we've made over the last month across the system to support our current students. We've taken 211,000 credit hours from traditional campus-based in-person learning to remote modalities of different kinds over the spring break in just a little over 2 weeks, really. That's 72% of our courses. So we've demonstrated that we can respond to the needs of our students. We know that some of that is a work in progress, and we're eager to hear. We're still working toward the end of the semester and making adjustments every day in how to make sure that that work is happening well. At the same time, we went from 5,800 students residing on our campuses to just a few hundred over that same period to keep our students and our communities safe following the spring break. Students got their room and board refunds in just 2 weeks. We have 5,000 student workers, and we've been able to keep our commitment and keep them employed. 98% of our students are still enrolled from the start of the semester. And I really would like to thank the Chancellor and his team for great leadership in this area, because we moved promptly and decisively to make these kinds of adjustments and changes for our students. We're analyzing thousands of student survey results across the system right now. And as I mentioned, we're trying to work to address issues that we're seeing. In the survey that we did at UMaine, we've had some concerns come up about students still not having good access to technology, and we're trying to make sure that we actually call individual students and urge them to call us to let us know exactly their situations, and we can help. So Chancellor, I'd like to turn to you now. As we get ready to bring our students back to our campuses, what if circumstances beyond our control prevent our return? What is our commitment to Maine students and to their families as we go into the next semester?
Well, I don't think anyone is better at educating the bulk of the audience of students in Maine than the University of Maine system. We have a university in our collection of universities for every student. And likewise, we have a long track record of meeting students where they are with different modalities of providing that education. Obviously, we got really pushed very hard to change to an all online system this year, and your comments, President, were well taken. The faculty has excelled in adjusting to this new way of providing education. It doesn't mean everyone's perfect at it. And that's why, although we're planning on opening a traditionally styled in-classroom university system, we are taking every day the lessons learned and applying them to a broader and broader audience of faculty members and staff to make sure that we are on this evolutionary path of ever improving the product and the product delivery system that we will potentially have to use. I would also say to the people of Maine, if you're going to receive an online education, receiving it from an institution that's literally in your state and not too far from where you are will allow us to make the kinds of adjustments in your lifestyle as well as our own that are necessary. No one's going to be more understanding of the needs of people of Maine than it's the Maine-based public educational system. I heard one of our presidents, Glenn Cummings, speak about how little debt students from within our system end up with. And that's been a very important project that we've been engaged in. I think a lot of young people don't know the significance of additional $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 in debt. The best investment someone in Maine can make in an educational system is to do that investment at an affordable rate for that family, for that individual, and for that profession sought to allow to be repaid. And I think no one's better at that than we are. So there are a lot of reasons that in this time of trouble and travail, and where every question can't be answered on a moment's notice, that this is the right place to be invested in. On a faculty basis, the number of PhDs involved in classroom work as well as research work in the University of Maine system is unparalleled by any institution on a percentage basis in the state.
Thank you, Chancellor. We all really are excited about the kinds of things that are being considered and actually have been implemented right now to make some academic actions happen within the system to serve our students well and to show our flexibility and to welcome you here if you aren't here yet, and to welcome you to stay if you are a current student. And so I'm going to turn to Ray Rice, who serves both as president and provost of the University of Maine at Presque Isle. So he's the chief academic officer there. Our chief academic officers have been working very, very hard throughout this period to make the kinds of quick changes that are needed to make sure that we carry forward our academic mission as flexibly and as fairly as we possibly can. So Ray, can you tell us about a few of the things that we're doing, both to help incoming applicants, but a bit even about our current students?
Certainly. Thank you, President Freeney-Mundy. I always like having two jobs, like so many Americans do here. The provost job that I'm involved with my colleagues across all the 7 institutions, as all of our students know, and I think as much of the public knows, we moved early on in this event to allow all students to transfer their grading assessment system of their courses to a pass-fail. Not just to one course per semester, as is the norm in higher education, but to any one of the courses they were taking this semester. And to make that choice to help alleviate the discomfort and the dislocation that was occurring as many of those students going from online, on-site courses and face-to-face courses moved to a virtual to a distance environment. So we knew that was important for our students, for each one of our institutions to employ that policy for this semester. We also recognized, of course, those incoming first-year students coming from Maine high schools or from high schools across the rest of the country to our institutions were also facing similar pressures and similar dislocation. So we made the decision just this past week, finalized again across all 7 of the institutions, to accept the pass-fail option for students coming out of Maine high schools into our system. So we'll be accepting any of those grades that students normally would have been graded in a percent scale or a letter grade scale. And we're accepting those pass-fail grades from any U.S. accredited institution, whether that's a high school, whether it's a fellow higher ed institution across the country, transferring into any one of our programs at this point in time. We'll also mitigate, and this is just as important as we know, because as the Chancellor mentioned, the debt level is one thing we're so proud of in the University of Maine system, that we are truly regional leaders and national leaders in reducing that debt of our students to make sure that we can mitigate any of those impacts of a pass-fail might have on scholarships. So all the people working in our financial aid offices are aware of this situation and the need for us to ensure that students aren't negatively impacted when they come to our institutions. We're also ensuring that we accept any of the advanced placement scores that students may earn in high schools at this point in time, bringing into our institutions this fall, regardless of the situation by which they sit for those exams. And AP is making adjustments in this COVID-19 environment in that regard as well. And we're also ensuring that any of the changes in the GPA, the grade point assessments that high schools are doing, do not negatively impact both the acceptance of students into our programs and, again, the scholarships and actions that might be taken. Finally, for our own students as well, just as I mentioned earlier, we allowed students to switch to a pass-fail option. We've also all decided as provosts across 7 institutions to suspend the kind of academic actions that might happen because of the impacts of this of students moving to online distance education. So if a student might normally be put on probation for the fall semester after having some difficulty this spring semester, we will not take that academic action for the fall semester, again, to help mitigate the effects and the pressures that we realize that students are on, and to help keep students on track. So all those students will get the professional advice and the tutoring that they need to help keep them on track and or get their grades back to the position they want to see them in the fall semester. But these are just some of the actions we're taking as provosts to ensure that our students not only are getting that extra attention this spring that they need, but that we're also supporting them as they're moving back into a normal situation in the fall, as we're all hoping for.
Thank you, President Provost Rice. One thing I'd like to point out as Ray is speaking, most of really all of the areas that he's highlighted are being addressed in fairly similar ways across all of our campuses, which means that, if you have, or I would like to add, I guess, if you have specific questions about what this looks like on a particular campus, you should be in touch with us. But just know that these general principles of great flexibility, of giving students lots of ways to demonstrate their success and their readiness for college work, all of these are principles really that we take across the system. I also would like to add that we're very mindful of our high school seniors across the state of Maine and high school juniors who are having a disrupted end of their academic year as well. And we're looking for as many ways as we can find to help bridge those gaps, to provide summer options, to enable students to find ways to fill in certain pieces that they may be missing, and also then to support them as they come in, knowing that there may be some need to help them along the way as they come up to speed. So we're looking to do that as well. I'd like to turn to President Boggs to hear a bit about what's happening at UMFK relative to admissions, and what it looks like to support applicants and their families as they try to make difficult decisions about higher education in this current climate.
Thank you, President Perini-Mundi. Here at UNFK, we've taken a similar action. Actually, it's an identical action to what the University of Maine Farmington has taken with regard to our deposit. We have chosen to accept a deposit of $20.20, and the intent there is to send a message that we will be here for you in the fall of 2020. We've also started working with a number of videos that we are sending out to applicants and to their parents. The applicants and their parents can no longer visit our campus, and as a result, we want them to have an understanding of what we have to offer. We want them to understand what our campus is all about. We want them to understand just exactly what kind of support systems we have for them, whether they're online or whether they're on campus. So those videos are being prepared right now and will be sent out very soon.
Thank you very much. We're getting a number of questions about how we'll make sure that in the fall, no matter what circumstances we face, we will still be able to try to meet students where they are, and in particular, getting questions about lab courses, clinical experiences, some of our courses in the arts, and how well that has gone in this past few weeks, as well as what we might be planning should we need to have various kinds of hybrid approaches at some point going forward. And all I can say from the perspective of UMaine is that we know those are challenging areas to address. I've been pleased to see some terrific faculty creativity around these areas, ranging from the use of video in dance courses so that students can have assignments at home and have those checked by faculty on the campus, to labs that are now running using simulations and working with analysis of data in different ways than had been planned, but to still cover the same content. But we acknowledge that we're working to be sure we're very, very good at these kinds of experiences remotely going forward, and we're learning so much right now. With that, I would like to turn to President White to talk to us about the financial impact that we know COVID-19 is having on so many families in our system. And we'd like to hear from you, Becky, a bit about how you're thinking about financial aid awards as we go forward.
Thank you, Joan. If a student has a change in their personal financial circumstances, if they are independent of their parents or an adult student, they absolutely should contact their financial aid officer. Or if you are a dependent student and your parent's situation has changed, you should contact the financial aid office. They have the ability to use their professional discretion in recalculating aid. So reach out to them if that's an issue. I would also note that the University of Maine system universities have about $97 million budgeted for what's called institutional aid. These are funds that we actually hand out to students in a number of different ways. This is a 6.5% increase over last year, and it's the most we have ever handed out. So I feel that we're well prepared to help those students who have the most need figure out how to finance their education. So students or their families should not struggle to do that alone. They absolutely should reach out to the financial aid offices.
We've had a number of questions come in about financial issues of different types, and I'm going to ask the Chancellor if he would take a couple of these. And the first is about the CARES Act. And people are aware that those dollars have been released or are being released by the federal government, and would like to hear a little bit about our planning for how those will get to students. We've also had a question, Chancellor, about the situation with tuition and whether there is any consideration of partial tuition refunds at this time during the situation that we're in. And so I'd like to turn to you for your thoughts on both of those.
Well, I'll take the tuition one up front and be solidly up front. We are educational institutions that are committed to well educating our students. We did not cause this epidemic. The epidemic has already cost us tens of millions of dollars. We're going to have to absorb much of that and look in some cases to federal assistance. And I would like to thank our congressional delegation for some of that assistance that's already been allotted to us. But the reality is that we measure ourselves in credit hours and credits gained. And our tuition rates, which were frozen for 6 years, are the tuition rates that we operate in the current year under. And something approaching those will be the tuition rate that we apply on a credit basis next year as well. There is no better bargain in the state of Maine when it comes to the acquisition of a baccalaureate, a 4-year degree, than the University of Maine system. Upwards of 90% of our students receive some form of adjustment in their billing. And or at least our in-state Maine students. So we're going to stick to that road. We're going to provide the lowest possible tuition that we can afford to do, and we will not penalize future students by spending ourselves into greater debt than has been caused by the circumstances as they've played themselves out. So we are committed, again, to not only meeting students where they are in our state, but providing that affordable outcome. I also want to point out that when we made the decision to go online, we made an instantaneous decision and announced that we would reimburse those individuals who had committed to housing or a food plan. We effected that in a 2-week period of time. That is, checks were actually in the mail in that 2-week period of time. And likewise, we've made a decision that many other universities did not make when we made it, and that was to keep our non-federal student employees, that is non-federally funded student employees, whole for the income that they had been projected to have, because we understood that those students needed those dollars to apply towards their cost of education. So we've gone to a great extent, I think in many cases further than most other universities that I've been able to read about in the nation, and we will continue to apply that standard to ourselves. Now, having given you such a long answer to that portion of the question, I forgot what the first portion of the question was.
CARES Act. When will
CARES Act
students hear more?
We were on the cusp of being able to answer definitively on a system-wide and campus-by-campus basis the question of how does the CARES Act, how will that be carried out? So I was looking forward to a Thursday afternoon or Friday morning and actually being able to answer that. Subsequently, that is later in the day that I had met with the campus presidents, the federal system came out with additional guidance that changed how we might consider distributing that money. So I suspect that our answer to that question will be delayed by a few more business days. But I would hope by this time next week or next Wednesday at the latest, we would be able to answer definitively to our students who will be receiving a portion of those care dollars, how that is calculated, how that is tied and in compliance with the federal government's new guidance, which we just received several hours ago. So we were ready, willing and able to tell you that guidance has changed those calculations. I commit that we will give that answer early next week.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. Very helpful. In a moment, I'll turn to Dean Softly to hear a little bit about how she and colleagues in the law school are thinking about the uncertainty in the job market and how we can be helpful to our students there. But first, I would mention there are a number of questions coming in that are quite specific to campuses about particular policies on those campuses. And so I urge folks to check the websites of our individual campuses, as well as contact the helplines and different information numbers that are posted for our individual campuses. We won't be able to get back to all of them. I will also say that, at least for the University of Maine, I'm going to be doing a coffee hour kind of chat with incoming students on April 29, and our colleagues across the system are doing this kind of thing. With that, Dean Softly, let's hear about how you and your students are thinking about the job market right now at this difficult time. You're on mute.
I'll get there eventually. Everybody stand by. I'm so glad you asked about the job market. It is like everything else in our lives right now, uncertain and employers, lawyers, places where there were internships and fellowships are all watching the same information that we're watching. Everybody wants to be safe. Everyone wants to return to business as usual as soon as possible. We've established a rapid response team at the law school to work with the students, to work with those whose internships may be delayed or whose jobs may actually have to be put off for a while. And the professors are all working together to make sure that there are some really meaningful opportunities for the 1Ls and 2Ls, and that the 3Ls are actually getting right out there and making sure that they can launch well, even in this very difficult market. But the good news is everybody is going to need more lawyers as the world goes back to work. Lawyers are needed in business, in science, in municipal work, across the board. So this is a great time to go to law school.
It's also a great time to be a part of the University of Maine system. We had a call today with alums who are ready and eager and willing to help our graduating seniors with career coaching and with tips, and also I'm hoping and counting on with connections and networking. So these communities are fantastic and are finding ways to support each other. With this, I'm going to close this segment. We'll be back to you. The next piece is about your questions. I'm going to start with President Cummings and then President Cerna, because we didn't get to them here. So we'll begin there, but please send your questions in to the UMS Facebook page. We'll be back shortly.
There's a small college at the foothills of the mountains in western Maine, the University of Maine at Farmington. Smack in the middle of the best skiing, hiking, rafting, and kayaking in the Northeast, near Sugarloaf and Sunday River. Farmington is Maine's nationally ranked college, a U.S. News top college for years and years, and a best value school. A college where professors know you by name and know you as a person. Here you'll learn how to think, not what to think. Our internships, student teaching, and research projects get you ready for your first job and your first promotion. We're not an expensive private school, we're not a big state U, and we're sure not a big city U. We're small and friendly, artsy quirky, really smart, super affordable Farmington. The University of Maine at Farmington, Maine's public liberal arts college that works.
This is my classroom.
This is my classroom.
This is my classroom.
With 10 locations throughout Maine, UMA has always been a part of your community. And our 30-plus years of experience delivering high-quality distance education and online courses means that you have an experienced education partner no matter where you are. Visit uma.edu for a better future.
Hello again, everybody. Thank you for the great questions that you're sending in. They're insightful. They give us a flavor for the kinds of things folks are worried about. Many of them are campus specific, and so we will put in place some ways to get answers back out to you if we don't cover them here. But one of them is we have a sort of specific question about what if remote learning doesn't work well for some students, but there's a really more general version of that, which is how are we hearing and understanding where our students are and how we can adjust and adapt with whatever our instruction is, be it remote or even in class as time goes on. What are we learning here about how to help all of our students be successful? And I'm going to turn to President Cummings to help us think about that.
Yeah, thank you, President Farini-Mundy. I first of all, I just want to repeat something the Chancellor made a very strong point of earlier, which I really concur, is that almost overnight, our entire faculty in the UMaine system moved to a different type of delivery. Some of them were very comfortable with that. Some of them had some level of comfort. Some of them really had to make a major transition. And I give them a lot of respect for the fact that our faculty immediately said, we get it, this is serious, and we need to find a new way to deliver this. For the majority of students, we know from surveys at every college that the majority of students by far said, this is not only doable, but quite frankly, it's being well done. And so we were impressed with that case, but it doesn't always fit easily, especially when it's brand new. There are a couple things that we have done that have been very helpful, and this is across the UMaine system. The first is every university has these, what we call it at USM, a Center for Teaching and Learning, could be a course design, a digital support system for their faculty that is extremely helpful for faculty to get course design and methodology that is more engaging. The other thing that we've done across the system is trying to make sure that we're reaching out to students on a personal basis. So we got the information from the system office, who's been on Blackboard in the last 48 hours, who's been on Blackboard in the last week, who has not been on some of these platforms, and then we went after them. So we used that information, went to the faculty and said, please reach out to the students who have not been engaging. That kind of personal contact has actually reduced the number of students who are not engaging with us on an academic level that we were concerned about. And I also think it exemplifies something that the UMaine system across the entire Seven Sisters is that we're committed to trying to make sure that students get a personalized experience, that they're not lost in a crowd, that there's somebody that we care about that's important to Maine, it's important to us, important to the national economy. And so I think, we will see ourselves growing. This is for a lot of people, this is the beginning. What we've found at USM, and I think it's probably across the board with all of the campuses, is faculty are coming back to us saying, okay, I want to learn more about how do I do course design that's even really what we'd call best practices. What are the things that we can do to make sure that people feel like they're engaged, that they're learning. And at the same time, I will be really frank, I think the chancellor and others have been too. Through this semester, our biggest goal is to get through the semester with supporting and delivering services the best way they can. As President Rice said, that may mean a pass-fail course instead of going for direct ABC, et cetera. So I think that those are the kind of things that we're doing to acknowledge that this transition is by no means perfect given how quickly it occurred. So we're very pleased, though, that we've stepped out into this area because we think the future probably will hold a lot of online delivery, and this is an opportunity for the UMaine system to get even more muscular in being able to deliver that.
Thank you very much, President Cummings. As we work through this conversation, it's apparent to you all, I hope, that there's a level of transparency and openness about how we're working through these issues and how we're thinking about them that we're very happy to share with all of you, and that we hope signals to you how committed this system is to doing a really good job for our learners. One of the questions, there are multiple versions of it here, so I'm going to give it to President Cerna, is when will you decide? When will we know? How will we be sure about what will happen with orientation or when classes will open? And Edward, hopefully you'll have some lovely, concise way to help us know the answer to that.
Lovely and concise. You gave me the hard one, Joan.
Yes.
I will say, across the University of Maine system, this is something we're still working through. Like I said earlier, it is a fluid situation. We are doing our very best. I know here at the University of Maine at Farmington, the summer experience is a cherished event for us, and the orientation is a cherished event for us. And we're going to do everything we can to preserve that. But it's still just so early for us to be making a decision on that right now.
Thank you. There are several questions about programs that require substantial experiential learning, programs that require a lot of hands-on and clinical experiences. And in general, how are we thinking about that? Well, certainly from the perspective of the University of Maine, and I think it's safe to say that across our system, we recognize that some of the most important career opportunities students are exploring are those where they have the chance to engage very early on in some kind of experiential learning, in some sort of research, in some kind of direct experience that has them working with faculty. We're learning through this pandemic that our faculty can pivot and can work on matters that are quite important to the state of Maine, everything from creating hand sanitizer to working in public health questions. And so our students will continue to have those opportunities. We're still open, we're doing business now, and students are engaging in these, albeit in new modes, but still having the chance to work with faculty who are working on real problems and helping them be educated in a way that will prepare them for their clinical experiences later on. So we're committed to this, and we will find ways to make this work. We already are. With that, I'm going to turn a question to the Chancellor, which has to do with, it's a cluster of questions really that have to do with I read them as people wanting to be reassured that we will make sure we are safe. What happens if we have a case of COVID-19 on one of our campuses? What will we be doing about dorms to ensure that we have social distancing in place? How will we kind of monitor health and make sure that we are keeping all of our students, our faculty, our staff, our communities safe? And so, Chancellor, thoughts on that?
Well, thank you for the easy one. What I would say to you is, first and foremost, we are pledging to be open for in-classroom learning. Will be ready. The question is, will the greater society be ready? Will we be allowed to do that? If we're not allowed to do that, we go down one road. If we're allowed to do that, we will also incorporate all the guidance that the CDC of Maine, the CDC of the federal government, other standards as they are being looked at and promulgated. As you referenced, President, in your earlier comments, you have stood up a committee of really medical and scientific advisors to us on that very point. And in the coming weeks and several months that we have, we will look at those rules. We will adopt those rules that can be adopted. We will meet whatever standard is required for us to be open for in-classroom learning. No one is going to outdo us in that regard. We take this very seriously. We know that is a preferred method for many, if not most, of our students. And so we lead with that, our desire to provide that, and the assurance that we will live by appropriate state and national standards. And we have our own scientists working on that question as I speak to you today. I'd like to make one other point, if I can, Joan,
Sure.
on this, President Farini Monday, excuse me, on this particular point. And I want to say something to students and parents who might be saying, well, let's take a year off. I would urge you that if you're ready to come to college and you're ready to come to the University of Maine system, you come, that you don't put a year off. Let me say this, that job prospects are going to be slow in developing. If your calculation is that you're going to be able to have a part-time job, that may not be possible. We also know statistically that if you take additional time, your education is going to get more expensive, not less expensive. Join us in some manner or other. Take some courses. I think you should take 5 courses. I think you should pass those courses. I think if we can help you graduate in 4 years, you're going to have substantially less debt than you would have had otherwise. Join us in the University of Maine system.
Thank you, Chancellor. In a moment, we'll go do a quick round, last word from everybody. I would like to just answer before that the question about NCAA and whether we are hearing anything from them. Absolutely in daily contact with them here at UMaine and our other campuses as we conduct a variety of scenario planning kinds of exercises, thinking about fall athletics. But trust me, the NCAA, the conferences in which we participate are all very eager to be back and also very, very interested in making sure we are safe. So we're getting a lot of good national discussion on that front. I'm just going to go around real quickly. Everybody gets a last word. President White.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you very much for hosting this evening. That was terrific. And I'm hosting next week, so I look forward to seeing folks then.
Thanks. Ray.
Thank you, President Farini Monday, and everybody. Thank you for the questions, especially from people out there. And I remind everyone, all of our institutions are here to answer your questions after this, and at any time, please do not hesitate to contact any of us.
Thank you. President Boggs.
What has made me most proud in these past 2 months is the way our faculty and our support system has stepped up to serve students. And additionally, what has made me proud is how the students have transitioned into a new learning mode. It is great to be a member of the community at the University of Maine system.
Thank you, President. Dean Softly.
So I want to echo what everyone just heard from the Chancellor. This is a wonderful time to come to a university that cares very much about its students, that's paying attention student by student. We are still accepting applications for the law school. There's never been a better time to go to law school. We hope we will see your applications soon.
Thank you very much. President Cerna.
Thank you. Just really excited about this next academic year, whatever it brings for us. And I want to echo what President Bach said. I have just been so impressed, and I'm so proud of the resilience and creativity that have come out of our faculty and staff in meeting our students' needs. They've truly done some phenomenal work.
Thank you. President Cummings.
Thank you, and thank you again for hosting. I think there are two things much on students' minds and on parents' minds right now. First of all, can we come back and have a full college experience, and will it be safe? I've been very, very impressed with our ability to make sure that the UMaine system can deliver both. We can give an open, welcoming response to all students, and we are looking forward to that, and we can do it in a safe way. And we have a number of other qualities that we heard tonight that we're very proud of, and we've seen it in full display in the last 2 or 3 months. So please come join us, and thank you again for hosting President Farini Monday.
Thank you, and I'll turn to the Chancellor in a moment. I'll just add how much I appreciate all of my colleagues here. This has been a wonderful session, but I have to say that working with this group over the past many weeks has led us to learn a lot of new things. I think we have come to understand ways in which we can communicate and be more transparent to our communities through this very difficult time. I'm hoping that many of the things we've learned will stay in place, and we'll be able to continue with these sorts of chats going forward. I think hearing from all of you, knowing your questions, enables us to serve all of you better, our students, our faculty, our staff, the communities in which we live, the state of Maine. So it is an honor to be a part of this, and I'm delighted that we've had a chance to talk tonight. Chancellor, if you could close the evening out for us.
Well, let me thank all of you, our presidents and dean who participated in the sharing of this information. Let me thank our faculty for their resilience and their ability to respond and put the interest of students first. To the students who have risen to the occasion in an imperfect world, a world which, quite frankly, this generation knows oh too well in the post 9/11, post Great Recession, and now with this particular malady that is affecting and infecting the world. We're going to rise to this occasion. We are going to be better for the lessons we've learned. We are going to mourn the passing of our friends and relatives. We owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves and our greater society to move on. And a big part of moving on for this audience of people is to receive that degree that will help you, quite frankly, contribute to a broader society and to enjoy the world as a lifelong learner, which we are so heavily invested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you all. Thank you for watching, and enjoy your evening.
Learn, innovate, find,
Engage. That's life.
That's life at the University of Maine at Fort Kent.
Learn more about life at the University of Maine at Fort Kent at umfk.edu.
So what's important to you in a college? The cool thing about UMP is I get a lot of playing time in softball. That's important to me, and it's affordable.